Hello there. My name is Rick, and though that introduction is a bit unusual for virtual legality, it's an unusual time in the world, including a rather poetic, unusual, cheesy titling of this video, Reflections. I didn't plan what I'm going to say here. I planned some of the contours of what I'm going to say, but I didn't want to get into a space where I was just planning out every word, whether that was scripted or following a set path, because I didn't want it to feel unearnest or insincere. It's a changing world. It really is. And the sense right now of not knowing what direction it's going in, where you're going to find yourself tomorrow, in the next month, maybe even in the next year, is one I really wanted to capture with this particular video. As we speak, COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, is a relatively small thing in the United States, but a very, very large thing in other portions of the world. And the entirety of the United States infrastructure is reacting to it. My littlest daughter just had an art show that she's been preparing for months canceled out of the blue because it was a public-facing thing and it was going to have many, many people come and visit her art that she's been working on. And unfortunately, she's crushed. She doesn't get to experience that, and she's put so much work into it. Very similarly, my other daughter has been working on a choir show that she may or may not get a chance to perform next week. We strongly suspect in the family that it won't happen, and that just crushes me. And those are very, very light impacts of something like coronavirus and COVID-19. Obviously, the reaction that we're seeing in the United States right now is because it has the possibility of impacting many, many more. In fact, while it may impact people in terms of sickness and fatality and mortality, what we've got happening to those of us who are unlikely to be strongly affected by the disease, to really have the wind knocked out of us for more than maybe a week, is that everything that we enjoy, everything that we look forward to that helps us get through the grind of a work day is being canceled before us as well. I live in Michigan, right? Those of you who have followed virtual legality probably know that about me by now. I drop in references to my Michigan Wolverines all over the place, and I love my state. I love it to death, but I don't love its winters. I've never been a cold weather guy. And so when March rolls around, one of the ways that I really know that it's springtime, that we can open our windows, that we can enjoy the air around us, is the NCAA's men's basketball tournament, which was canceled not 5-10 minutes ago. Unfortunately, that makes sense in the world that we're looking at right now. March Madness won't exist this year. There won't be a 2020 tournament. Very similarly, as spring turns into summer, I have long taken a half day or spent a day with my clients talking about what video games they might be looking forward to or that they might release themselves at the biggest video game exposition, E3, in Los Angeles. As we speak, E3 2020 has been canceled due to growing concerns over COVID-19. And a lot of people have asked me to give my thoughts on these things in virtual legality, and I have thoughts. I have thoughts about the ESA and whether or not this was a good idea, whether it was a bad idea, what they were trying to accomplish in 2020, that maybe with an extra year of work, they might actually get to some place that everybody can be happy with, and how this cancellation probably came at the best possible time for saving E3. And maybe I'll do a video about that. Maybe I'll do a video that talks about the business implications of the cancellation, how insurance works, refunds for tickets, and all that stuff. But in the last 48 hours, I really haven't wanted to focus on that minutia. I really haven't wanted to focus on what the compensation is going to be between these two parties, or how offended or outraged you should be about issue X or issue Y. We'll get back to that. We will. I love talking about those things in virtual legality. I love having those conversations with you all. But today, last couple days, I I really wanted to just reflect on what we're seeing. We're living through a very specific moment in history, and it feels a lot like prior moments in history in my lifetime. Not so much based on how they came to be, but because you can sense the change on the horizon. And I think change is something that really unmoors people, right? Also, yesterday we saw one of our more popular actors, Tom Hanks, and his wife, Rita Wilson, admit that they had come down with coronavirus. And I think that put a face on it for people. I saw my social media really light up with this particular news. And it's potentially devastating, right? Now, thankfully, this COVID-19 is not a super virus. It's not Captain Trips from Stephen King's The Stand. It's not going to kill us all and lead us directly into The Last of Us or The Walking Dead or some version of that story that doesn't involve zombies. But what it is something that is going to affect big swaths of the world, and it's something that's easy to ignore when you're just seeing social media pundits talk about it, or politicians kind of argue about policy in the same way that they do about so many other issues. But when you see Tom Hanks, you see Rita Wilson, you see above this particular article, Broadway hit as New York governor bans Broadway. You know, we're living in interesting times, and that's always been a curse, right? We want to not be bored with our lives. We want to not be bored with our existence. We want it to have a purpose and a meaning and a novelty and a newness. But we don't want to not know what next week looks like, what next month looks like, what next year looks like. We want to have a certain amount of foundational belief in what our future holds. And that's really one of the reasons why we see some of the things that we are seeing and that compound this kind of sense of unnormality, of fear and panic. You see it in the stock market, right? Stocks plunged 10% in Dow's worst day since 1987. You see it in the politicians trying to respond to that kind of plunge. And if you're not familiar with how the markets work, they're essentially bets on what kind of future these companies are going to have. So it's not really a surprise when you get to a level of uncertainty that we're seeing right now to have these kinds of plunges. I can scarcely think of another time in United States history in my lifetime where we've had this amount of uncertainty, maybe in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. But even there, that was a sense that the market, the economy, people would kind of get back to normal. That was an outward attack. This is something else entirely. This is a virus that is affecting what we know about what we can supply in the future, and more importantly, what people are going to demand in the future. Because that question, the demand question, is psychology. And businesses can't know that. And businesses that run on ultra-thin margins are looking at a society that might not want their goods or services for 6 months, maybe a year. And so the Dow, the NASDAQ, the stock markets reflect that uncertainty. Now, I'll say this. The stock market isn't the economy. We are still capable as a world, not just the United States, of producing the same amount of goods and services that we were 3 months ago. But now with all of that volatility, now with all of that uncertainty. So unlike something like a recession caused by a financial crisis, as is the case in 2008, we have a very unusual set of circumstances here. It's all right to be concerned. It's all right to feel uncertain. It's all right to not like where this is going or how it feels. But all of this is happening because of that uncertainty, not because we are going to enter into a zombie apocalypse. And I think it's pretty easy for people to fall on either side of that kind of knife's edge. That's what I'm seeing in my social media. That's what I'm even seeing from the people that I converse with regularly, from people that are my friends or close acquaintances, is this kind of, oh, we need to panic. We need to go and collect all the toilet paper from the Costco, and we need to run around and potentially act like we are in an episode of The Walking Dead on the one hand. Or, oh, it's just the flu. It's not going to do anything to anybody. Why are we all panicking in Michigan or elsewhere? There's 3 cases, there's 4 cases, there's 5 cases. And the answer to that is, hey, exponential or logarithmic growth curves, they don't look like anything until they suddenly do. And we've kind of got the ability in the United States to peer into the window and say, oh, this is what happens if you do this policy or if you don't do this policy. You look at Italy, you look at China, you look at how Singapore has handled things, Hong Kong, South Korea, and you can see what's working and what's not working and how and when you really have to start locking things down. And so I don't think you need to panic. I don't think you need to run around like a chicken with your head cut off. But I do think if you're on the other side of the spectrum, if you're saying it's just a flu, if you're saying there's nothing to worry about, that's not terribly accurate either. And I understand that there are some people on that particular side of the knife that are looking at things and saying, I don't want to project that I'm at all concerned about this, so I'm going to lock it down. I'm going to cover myself in bubble wrap, and I'm going to show that I don't care about this thing at all. That makes sense, right? To some extent, we understand the psychology of that. And there's another factor, of course, which is to say, if you're under 30, it's probably not going to affect you much at all. All of the tests, everything that we have seen on this thing suggests that it's mostly going to affect people over that age, and most specifically affect people at the far end of the age spectrum, as well as those that are immunocompromised. So what you're seeing in certain places on the internet, what you're seeing in maybe certain behaviors of your colleagues or your friends or even your family is a certain disregard. Hey, I'm in a demographic that doesn't get affected by this so much, so I'm not going to worry about it, and all of you are panicking for nothing. But the fact remains, we've got millions and millions and millions of people in the United States and certainly across the globe that fall into those demographic areas that will be affected if this thing really, really takes off, really, really starts saturating huge sections of the population. And I think when people really think about it, they all have somebody in their lives, whether it's a close relation, whether it's a friend, whether it's a friend's relation, whoever it might be, that probably falls into one of these buckets. And if we really think about it, that's when it makes sense to say, okay, precaution. Precaution isn't the worst thing in the world. Precaution is maybe a good idea. And maybe we are kind of dealing with something special. We don't have these kinds of outbreaks very often in the modern world. The people that are alive right now don't necessarily have any experience in dealing with these kinds of things. And so that's how you get to levels of uncertainty that we're seeing today, is you don't have notions of outbreaks. You don't have notions of these kinds of natural disasters that are invisible and that affect people by touch, and that now we have to socially distance and isolate and think of all these things every moment of every day. And that's not to anybody's fault, right? That speaks to how well we've lived, certainly in the United States, in my entire lifetime. We've been blessed with protection and safety and not having to think about these things due to the actions of our predecessors and the eradication of all these terrible, terrible diseases that people before us had to live with. And that's a great thing to think about, that these kinds of things have been solved in the past, right? And they will be solved again in the future. This is a bit of a test run. Relatively low mortality rate, very virulent disease, but something that we can deal with, something that we are prepared to deal with as a scientific community, just in terms of the advancement of our technology. And in terms of the way I like to see the world, even when you have maybe the happiest place on earth closing, because we don't know what we don't know in terms of what the infection rate is. We don't know what could happen in the future. Even when you have things that you love, like E3 and March Madness and Disneyland, or maybe you're a big Broadway fan or just a Tom Hanks fan, even when those things happen, humanity prevails, humanity survives, humanity moves on, not necessarily because we do everything right. Lord knows you can look at any number of speeches, any number of actions, any number of institutions and structures that have failed in various ways over the past couple of months. That's because those institutions and structures and edifices that we build to protect us are made up of humans. and they make decisions that are mistakes. They make decisions that are politically motivated. They make decisions that maybe aren't the right ones. But even then, in the past, we've overcome, and in this situation, we'll overcome again. I find that heartening. And I know it's hard to see. I know it's hard to see for a lot of people when you feel like the sky is falling, when you don't have March Madness to look forward to, or E3, or anything else that you personally might love that is completely separate from the things that I look forward to in my year. You know, if you've got something that was canceled and you want to share it in the comments to this video, leave it. Leave that comment. Talk to us about what you're going to be missing. Talk to us about how you feel about it, what's going on in your life. You know, my girls are very young. You know, they're in primary school, and they're dealing with this kind of notion of life is not fair to a much higher degree than I ever had to deal with it at their age. And they're coping, they're making do, but I feel for them. And I feel for everybody else that this touches directly. I am able to work remotely. I am able, in the year 2020, to do a lot of things that people even 20 years ago wouldn't have been able to do in a situation like this. And that's the kind of thing I like to focus on. In virtual legality, we wind up talking about law and business at such a minute level, at such a granular level of detail, that I think sometimes some people come into this channel and watch my stuff and say, oh, you know, he's a cynic or he's a lawyer. That comes with the territory, right? I believe it was J.K. Rowling that said that every lawyer is a Slytherin. That a lawyer looks at things in this very specific way, and maybe they don't have that kind of optimism or that romantic ideal or that belief in human beings or things like that, because we're talking about business and stock markets and law and board of directors. But everybody, even lawyers, are human beings at some fundamental level. And so I like to look at these things, and I really like to look at the silver lining. You look at the situation we are in now in 2020, facing something like this. You see descriptions of Bungie, the makers of Destiny, previously the makers of Halo, saying everybody should work from home. You see Microsoft doing the same thing and Nintendo doing the same thing. And in all honesty, you are likely about to see almost every major employer in the United States decide to do something like this. And I look at that and I see people say, oh my goodness, what is happening? And it's a sea change, yes, but it's an interesting one. It's an important one. We've built up a robust networking infrastructure. We have applications upon applications. We have cloud services. We have all of these abilities, not just to work right now in the cloud, not just to work remotely and to facilitate that work remote in the services industry across the country and across the globe, but we have the ability, because of that expertise, because of that experience, to build up this infrastructure almost in a snap. You've got school districts now across the country trying to figure out how to put together an online platform to allow their universities to thrive. That'll probably advance to middle school and high school and elementary school in the next couple of weeks or month. And you see that. You see the time frame they give for that. We need 48 hours. We need a day to train our teachers, that kind of thing. That wouldn't have been possible at all 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. And I look at that and I say, my goodness, yeah, we're prepared from a science and technology basis to figure out how to build a vaccine for this thing, to figure out how to test for it, to do those medical things. But we're also prepared as a society to try to figure out how to mitigate the entirety of the impact of something like this. To be able to say, all right, everybody hit the button, work remotely, go to your stations. We can figure this thing out because we've been working on the technology to make this possible forever. In a very real way, we are built for this. And to me, that's very heartening to think about. Not only that, I do think the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is going to be something that changes society at a fundamental level. Not because it's going to kill everybody. You don't need to panic. You don't need to run around with your head cut off. But because it's going to open up certain eyes. It's going to essentially act as a jolt to the system of business and the economy and the way we live our lives. I really do think that the infrastructure is ready for this, that we're going to find we don't lose that much productivity from operating in this way. And because of the robustness of that infrastructure, because of what we are capable of doing as a people, as a society, as a world, with the things that we have built, I think it's going to open up whole different mechanisms for how to run a business, how to provide services, how to give goods to people, because we aren't necessarily going to be organized in cities. We aren't going to have to be in specific locations to do certain things. And that's going to continue to grow and build and be great. Yes, because of a virus to start out with, but also because of human ingenuity and creativeness and stick-to-itiveness and just ability to make do with the hand that we are dealt. I look at that and say, that's a really good thing. And of course, we've seen that kind of social distancing, that isolation, what these various countries are practicing in order to keep people away from each other, that does have some effect, that is useful in trying to make sure that a virus like this one doesn't overwhelm the various jurisdictions' health systems. And now in the year 2020, certainly in the West, but in the United States in particular, and unfortunately that's all I can speak to because this is where I live, we've never been in a better place to make it not excruciating to isolate ourselves at the level that some of these kinds of health services are recommending that we do. We have Hulu, we have Netflix, we have streaming music, we have books we can beam into our homes, we have video games that we can ask for at any time. I pulled up a random Quora website here that talks about how much time is on Netflix alone. This person is from the Netherlands, added up some stuff, did some math, and said we have 8.5 years of Netflix content watched end to end in order to entertain ourselves. And entertainment, it sounds so silly, right? Entertainment doesn't matter that much. Entertainment isn't that much of a big deal. But when we talk about social distancing, when we talk about isolation, it is critical to not losing one's mind, to not kind of getting into that despair cycle, and otherwise just needing to be with people, just needing to go out and potentially recreating the problems with the spread of a virus like this one. And so the Netflixes, the Hulus, the PlayStation networks, the Xbox Lives, everything else that kind of goes into that breadbasket of how you might entertain yourself. Pulling up a new digital book on your Kindle, listening to an audiobook that you're streaming in, brand new. That's all going to help actually save so many lives in America and in other countries because you are just going to, even on the margins, reduce the possibility of people wanting to break that kind of social isolation and start to get out there more. And that's the biggest problem when you talk about something that maybe isn't that deadly, but is very, very spreadable. And so I look again and I say, yeah, in 2020, we've got this major problem. Nobody is having any fun. Everybody is having everything that they love canceled, except maybe the work that they do, which maybe isn't so fun. And even still, everything we've done, everything we've built, the ability to work remotely, yeah, it's always been nice to potentially only put on sweatpants and take a conference call and figure out your deal documents without having to go into the office or put on a suit. That's always been a nice to have, a quality of life thing that you could do maybe on occasion. But now that we are called to use that, to rely on that, it's there for us. And I've brought up clips, right? I brought up a clip of Armageddon. It's a late 1990s movie from genre connoisseur Michael Bay. It's a silly movie in which Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck go and fight a meteor. But one of the things I've always really loved about this movie, and it's cheesy as all heck, but maybe not any cheesier than this video that I'm making right now, is this presidential speech that they give in the middle of this movie. And you're seeing it kind of quoted in front of you. But I've always really liked this kind of notion that you've got this almost impossible problem. And he says the human thirst for excellence, knowledge, every step up the ladder of science, every adventurous reach into space, all of our combined modern technologies and imaginations, even the wars that we fought, have all prepared us for this, right? That everything we've done as a people, as humanity, every company that we've made, every technology that we've built helps us be stronger, more resilient to something like this. And I sit here and, yeah, that's a cheesy concept. That's a cheesy concept that I think is a useful one in uncertain and unusual times. There's nothing wrong with cheesiness. There's nothing wrong with believing in heroes. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel comfortable and not so uncertain. And so as I go forward this week and into next week and the week after that, and we work on being more socially distant, more isolating, working remotely more often, potentially with my kids home from school, and having all of these new interactions with my family in a very unusual circumstance with no sports to watch, no March Madness to look forward to, or E3, movies moving out of the year that I was really interested in, I still think there are silver linings, there are reasons to hope, and there's reasons to hope because of everything that we've done together, that we will continue to do together. And even those folks on social media who look so cavalier or maybe insulting or having ad hominem attacks thrown at various politicians, or maybe you personally, I think there's a lot of uncertainty even for them. And so I think we can get it through this together. I think it's going to be maybe not as bad as the worst fear, definitely not as good as those that want to just brush it aside think it might be. But at the end of the day, it's going to be something that is going to be okay, and that we're all going to get through together. March Madness, E3, Disneyland, baseball, even without those things, we're going to do it because we can. And as I said when I started at this video, I didn't plan for much of what this was going to be. So much like the coronavirus itself, I hope that it turned out okay. I hope that you caught something in here that resonated with you, that you otherwise liked. And believe me, this is when I usually would tell you that this is what we talk about all the time in virtual legality. This is not what we talk about at all. But if you enjoyed this, share it around. Let people know that it's all right to be scared, but that it's all going to be okay. Thank you very much for checking us out. Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel.